neocortex, with all of its ration and reason and ego, says, don't be ridiculous. You don't need to run out of here. Nothing's going to happen to you. We talk ourselves out of that sensory place of get the heck out of here, right? Fight this person off, you know? But it's that neocortex that talks us out of it. So the amygdala, in its wisdom, the animal brain in its wisdom, knows to go on, right? The amygdala sends its message for the animal brain to go on and sends its message to the neocortex to shut down. Here's the problem. That's fine. That's fine if it's working in a normal way, so that if our children get afraid, the amygdala goes, they go into fight or flight, and then the threat goes away, and the amygdala goes trails off, and the animal brain calms down, and then the neocortex comes back on board, right? As soon as that animal brain is soothed and in its comfortable place, then the neocortex does come back on board in a more fully functioning way. With extreme stress or trauma, what happens with that amygdala is that eventually there is an accumulation of extreme stress or trauma on the brain over time, an accumulation of stress on the nervous system over time, that eventually that amygdala fails to stop sending the message of fear to the animal brain. It's called the kindling effect of the amygdala. What that means is that eventually the amygdala doesn't stop. It turns on and it doesn't turn back off. It keeps the animal brain in a highly aroused fight or flight response, in a survival mode, and it keeps the neocortex shut down. It starts to impair the functioning of the neocortex. It keeps it shut down. So think about that for our little babies and our students, our children, who are living in chronically stressed conditions. I mean, you can throw out there what some of those would be: poverty, homelessness, hunger, goodness, why isn't it all coming to me right now? But every form of stress you can imagine, even going from house to house in a divorce situation or a separation situation where mom lives over here or dad lives over there, and they're moving from here to there and wondering when they're going to see the other one again. All these parents who are deployed overseas, fighting in wars, witnessing domestic violence. So many of our children are witnessing domestic violence. They're witnessing substance abuse on the part of a parent, right? They're witnessing their parent suffer with chronic illness. When are they going to die? Are they going to be here at the end of the school day? Children are dealing with their own chronic illness. Am I going to die? Do I have to go to the hospital again? What's going to happen next time? I could go on and on about all the ways in which children are chronically stressed or traumatized. And when that happens, when they have these experiences that are prolonged in that way, that amygdala eventually fails to stop sending the message of fear. It stays on in this kindled way, and it keeps the animal brain on and the neocortex shut down. So back to oppositional defiant disorder, right? We want to pathologize this. You give a direction to a child. And if this child has been chronically stressed or traumatized and froze during their experiences, because that's what the animal brain decided would lead to their survival, right? Then they have the tendency now, because the way the brain develops, that those neural connections for freezing found each other, right? They froze in that condition. So neurons for freezing fired, found each other, formed a neural connection, and now make it more likely that that child is going to continue to respond in a freezing type of a way. So that when you give them a direction, right, you're speaking with words to the part of the brain that is shut down, right? So the part of the brain that processes words is impaired. It's shut down in a child who's been chronically stressed. It's their animal brain that's alive and well. They're in a survival mode. They're in a fight or flight response. They're in a highly aroused place, right? So if we want to communicate with them, we have to do it through sensation. We have to do it through sensory experiences, right? That's how we soothe the animal brain and we get the neocortex back on. But if we're giving them a verbal command and we're saying, listen, I told you you need to blah, 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 and they're just sitting there looking at you in this freeze response, we've decided to say, well, how disrespectful, and you're just sitting there, how many times do I have to tell you? And we just get more and more angry, more and more upset. They go deeper and deeper into this freeze because their arousal is getting so high, right? So we call it oppositional defiance disorder when in fact it's a freeze state, right? Or we call this over-aroused place ADHD. We want to give a pill for that. Or we call the under-aroused place depression and want to give a pill. The point being, these are natural responses. This is how the brain and the body naturally respond to feeling threatened by a lot of really unnatural things. Your parents beating each other up is not natural. We don't have babies so that they can witness, so that they can go into a sheer terror state. That's what they go into. It's a state of terror in every cell of their body when they hear the screaming, or they see the things being thrown around the room, or they see, the physical violence, or they see their mom or dad passed out, in front of the toilet, and they don't know if they're dead or alive. This renders them in this state of sheer helplessness. That's a natural response of their brain and body to go into that place. It should not be pathologized, but that is what we're doing when they're over-aroused, under-aroused, or really shut down. We want to label it, we want to medicate it, and what we're now witnessing is how way off the mark that is. Because here's the truth. Here's what we know. Trauma can be healed. The effects of stress and trauma can be healed, period. These are not lifelong conditions that can only be managed with medication and therapy. No. This over-aroused place, this under-aroused state, right? All of these behaviors here that are out of that zone of optimal arousal can be healed, right? We can bring our children, and us for that matter, we can come back in to the zone of optimum arousal with very specific kinds of interventions. And when we do intervene in a specific kind of way, we go back into the zone. We re-stimulate self-regulation, and all those so-called symptoms go away. Those so-called pathological disorders go away. We don't need medication. We don't need lifelong therapy. We need specific intervention that will get us back into that healthy zone where self-regulation becomes automatic once again, and all of learning and adaptive prosocial behavior and healing is possible. So that's a message that needs to get out there in a big way. We've got to stop pathologizing, get the right kinds of intervention going so that this very important capacity of self-regulation is restored, right? So I'm talking about transformation. I'm not talking about coping, right? Well, a lot of people talk about coping. Coping keeps us in our status quo in a way. It's like we just sort of want to get through the moment or get through the day. I'm talking about transformation. I'm talking about, healing so that our nervous system goes from being in this really tight, terrified place to a really open, fluid, receptive, beautiful, comfortable place again, where we don't, we no longer respond in these overreactive or disproportionate kinds of ways, right? That's what we're seeing now. And it's not just what we're seeing in the schools with our children. We need to get real that we all react in disproportionate ways until we're in our own zone as parents, as educators, as healers. We're absolutely useless to our children. So we can't just be talking about this in terms of that's what we're dealing with in the schools with students. It's true that this is a cultural, societal problem that we're having, that we're all running from our trauma. We're all medicating our stress. We're all over pathologizing and labeling and popping a pill. We're all doing it because we bought into this idea that these responses can't be healed. And so they can. They absolutely can. We just need to know how. and we're going to talk about how, and get on with the business of living with joy and vigor. With joy and vigor.